At the depth of a quiet midnight hour, a peculiar visitor entered my bookstore. She was a gaunt figure, with straw-like blonde hair drooping over her frail shoulders, and her attire suggested she was ready for bed, not a midnight book run. Initially, she appeared ordinary enough, and after welcoming her in with a brief nod, I refocused on organizing the shelves. A few moments later, however, I felt a lingering presence near my counter. I glanced up to find her standing at an unnervingly close proximity. Her gaze locked onto me with an intensity that unnerved me. It was a disconcerting, unblinking stare, void of any discernible emotion. I tried engaging her in conversation, offering my help, but she chose to remain silent, her unsettling stare unbroken. As she moved around the bookstore, she maintained her gaze, at times even walking backwards to keep me within her sight. Eventually, she returned to the counter with a selection of books. Her gaze remained affixed on me, and a soft murmur of words escaped from her lips. It was a challenge to decipher her whispers, but I discerned a request for a specific author after repeated attempts. I fetched the book, rang up her purchases, and she paid, all while continuing her unbroken, emotionally void stare. By this time, the surreal nature of the encounter was becoming increasingly uncomfortable, and I yearned for her departure. As I passed her the change, her stony face broke into a sudden, inexplicable smile. But what could have been a moment of relief turned unsettling as she erupted into laughter. It was a peculiar sound, more of a raspy cackle than a laugh, an eerie chorus that stirred memories of ghostly tales and witch stories. I tried to maintain my composure, wished her a pleasant night, and retreated slightly from the counter. We stood, her lost in her strange amusement, and me in a state of utter bewilderment. She eventually ended her unsettling performance, leaving the bookstore in her odd, backwards manner, her laugh lingering in the air long after her departure. Shaken, I reassured myself that she might be dealing with her own troubles, or perhaps was under the influence of something. Her departure to the outside gave me enough courage to resume my work, trying my best to dispel the lingering eeriness. However, about an hour later, my heart pounded in my chest as I heard a loud thud against the store's glass window. There she was again, her palm pressed flat against the window, her laughter resonating in the silent street. My startled reaction seemed to amuse her further, and she began to tap rhythmically against the glass. I decided to leave the books and retreated behind my counter. Finally, I sought refuge in my back office, keeping an eye on the store from the security monitors. It was almost an hour before she finally left, her bizarre laughter gradually fading into the distance. Thankfully, the store's doors were securely locked, preventing any unwanted nocturnal encounters. Her intentions remained a mystery, and while she may not have been a direct threat, her presence was undeniably unsettling. Since that night, I have spotted her wandering the adjacent sidewalks occasionally, but she has not ventured into my bookstore again. The memory of that peculiar encounter continues to linger in the quiet, midnight air. The stage for this uncanny encounter is set at an out-of-the-way petrol station nestled deep in Tennessee's wilderness, where I am gainfully employed. The night in question began as a peaceful one. As I clocked in for my shift at 8 p.m., the station was remarkably silent. Due to the station's isolated location along a forgotten country road, a calm night was not out of ordinary. This road was once a bustling artery until a decade ago, when a new expressway was inaugurated, pushing businesses to migrate, leaving behind a ghost town of vacant buildings, often claimed by local substance abusers. With an hour left of my shift, around 11 p.m., I decided to pull myself away from the tranquility to replenish our dwindling stock of BBQ chips, stored bizarrely in the station's basement. At 18, I was entrusted with the sole responsibility of the night shift, which allowed me to manage tasks at my own leisure. However, the eerie ambiance of the basement made this seemingly simple chore an unnerving one. As I descended the stairs, a sudden clatter echoed from the far corner of the room, sounding ominously like approaching footsteps. My heart pounding in my chest, I bolted back up the stairs, locking the basement door behind me. Scrambling back to the sanctuary of the counter upstairs, I quickly pulled up the basement view on our security feed. On the monitor, an unsettling sight awaited me. A man, standing in the midst of the gloom, grinning unsettlingly into the camera. His eyes radiated an eerie madness, starkly contrasting his tidy appearance. His neat beard, casual jeans, and crisp button-up shirt would have made him seem utterly ordinary had he walked into the store. But there he was, in the unsettling depths of our basement, his unsettling smile aimed straight at the camera. It was a sight that sent shivers of dread coursing through me. Overwhelmed, I dialed the station owner, who was initially disgruntled by the late-night interruption. But as he sensed the panic in my voice, his irritation gave way to concern. He instructed me to secure the main entrance and ensure the man didn't escape, promising to be there within 15 minutes. Strangely enough, he advised against involving the police at this stage. Once the station's door was bolted, I returned to the security footage. The man was still in position, his relentless, chilling smile burning into the camera. After a few unnerving minutes of the silent duel, he finally stepped out of the camera's range. The owner arrived soon, shotgun in hand, and immediately descended into the basement. I accompanied him for some semblance of security, only to find the basement deserted. The owner attributed the incident to tiredness-induced hallucination, but I knew what I had witnessed. Now, as I face the imminent dread of my upcoming shift in a few hours, I'm gripped by an unprecedented fear. The echo of that chilling smile continues to haunt me. My name is Tom, and I work the night shift at the old mill on the edge of town. The mill has a reputation for its eerie atmosphere, accentuated by its ancient, worn-out machinery and the lonely surrounding woods. One particular night, I clocked in as usual at 10 p.m. The cool summer breeze carried an unusual silence. The only sound I could hear was the occasional creaking of the mill's age-old gears, a somewhat comforting routine by now. Around 2 a.m., when the mill's deep hum was usually the only soundtrack, I heard something different, a faint metallic scraping echoing through the vast structure. I shrugged it off, figuring it was probably just the wind playing tricks with some loose equipment. But it persisted, growing in volume and frequency, a grinding melody in the quiet night. Nervously, I decided to investigate, armed with only a flashlight and the desperate hope it was nothing sinister. The sound led me to the back of the mill, a section that hadn't been used for years, a relic of its prosperous past. The scraping became louder, more intense. My heart pounded in my chest as I hesitated at the doorway. With a deep breath, I pushed open the door, letting the weak beam of my flashlight cut through the thick darkness. The room was filled with antiquated machinery, untouched for years, their hulking forms gathering dust. But what caught my eye was a child's wooden rocking horse in the middle of the room, its paint peeled and faded, rocking back and forth on its own. I was rooted to the spot, my heart pounding in my chest. The horse continued to rock with no apparent force moving it. Suddenly, a deafening crash echoed through the room as one of the rusted machines fell, narrowly missing me. Startled, I stumbled backward, dropping my flashlight. As I bent down to pick it up, I heard a child's laughter echo around the room, chilling me to the bone. Panicking, I grabbed my flashlight and bolted out of the room, the child's laughter still ringing in my ears. I ran through the mill, my breath ragged, the once comforting hum, now a menacing growl. As I reached my station, I slammed the door shut and collapsed, my body shaking from fear and exertion. I kept my ears alert, straining to hear any sound beyond the normal humming of the mill, but all I heard was silence. It was the longest night of my life, spent in fearful anticipation, waiting for the dawn. Ever since that night, I always hear that child's laughter carried in the wind during my shifts. Some nights, when the moon is hidden and the stars are faint, I see the shadow of a rocking horse cast on the mill floor. I never ventured back to that room, yet every night at the mill is a reminder of the unseen horror that resides within its walls. My name's Mark, and I've been working the night shift as a security guard at our local museum for the past 6 months. Every night, the sprawling edifice filled with ancient artifacts is my kingdom. Until one night, a series of peculiar events gave me a fright I'll never forget. The evening started just like any other. Midnight chimed, and I began my solitary vigil. The museum was silent except for the monotonous hum of the security monitors in my office. Suddenly, around 3 a.m., the stillness was interrupted by a strange rustling sound from the second floor's Egyptian exhibit. I initially brushed it off as the heating system acting up again, but the noise continued, escalating into a muffled shuffling that echoed through the vacant halls. Grabbing my flashlight, I decided to investigate. As I climbed the grand staircase, the strange sounds grew louder. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled as I approached the exhibit. I swept my flashlight across the room, the beam dancing over ancient hieroglyphs and centuries-old artifacts. Then I noticed it. The museum's newest acquisition, a lavishly decorated sarcophagus of an obscure pharaoh, was slightly ajar. Panic seized me as I realized that this was the source of the noise. I cautiously approached the sarcophagus, my heart pounding in my chest. Gingerly, I pushed the lid further open, only to be met with a pair of terrified eyes staring back at me. A man dressed in black had been hiding in the sarcophagus. He lunged at me, knocking me off my feet and sprinting towards the exit. Regaining my senses, I gave chase, the adrenaline drowning out my fear. We raced through the museum's halls, ancient relics mere blurs in our sprint. As he neared the entrance, I managed to trip him up with a well-aimed throw of my flashlight. By the time I had him pinned down, the police had arrived, alerted by the silent alarm he had triggered when he broke in. They took him away, thanking me for my quick actions. Since that night, every shift is a reminder of the intruder. My once quiet job has become a series of what-ifs and potential dangers. The silence of the museum now resonates with the echoes of that encounter, and the stillness of the night is forever stained with the memory of that chilling chase. Thanks for watching.